Yo, hope everybody's doing well. Saturday morning, and you're seeing people drop their reviews on Rise of Skywalker. Now, I'm not a Star Wars guy. This isn't even necessarily a Star Wars video. We're going to be discussing it and some of my observations as far as the reactions. Now, this could be, as far as what I'm about to dive into, this could be, like, it's just how I see it, right? I'm not going to try to claim that this is universal. Like, if you look at it through your lens, you may see it differently. But this is as far as the way that I noticed in terms of the reactions that's surrounding these last movies. Now, you guys know that some of my colleagues, like, Nerdrotic and such, are they're Star Wars guys. They're knowledgeable on that. And some of us cross over because a lot of guys that like Star Wars like comic books as well. My thing is, like, I'm just a comic guy, right? That's comics is my thing. It's particularly DC and Marvel. And I've been watching videos. I've told you guys this. I'm just going to be, it's just observation, right? And enjoying people's commentary about this franchise, even though it's something I personally don't care about because I'm not a Star Wars guy by any means. I've long said that I can appreciate people and their particular fandoms or subcultures that they're a part of, and I can appreciate their commentary even if I know little to nothing about it. But this is my observation 2 minutes into the video. I feel like when we compare, and it's funny because, like, if you talk about Marvel, both of these franchises are owned by Disney when you talk about Marvel and Star Wars. Now, me personally, as far as the way that I see it, I feel like there's a difference between how the diehard fans of Star Wars and just even like the more moderate guys that aren't necessarily diehards, but the more moderate folks. I feel like they demand excellence, which is good. Certainly when you consider how developed this franchise is, how historic it is. It's just basically it's part of pop culture. Even though it's nerd culture, and quite often that does not ever happen. We're starting to see this with the comic book stuff because of the Arrowverse and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example, that you're seeing that with comic books. But it's not often that nerd culture becomes pop culture. But that's what Star Wars is. Even people that don't really have maybe seen a movie or two, they know quotes from Star Wars. It's iconic in that sense in American culture. It's embedded in American culture. And as far as my observation, as far as what I'm seeing people demand excellence from it, particularly from a continuity standpoint. And seeing some of the, I've watched more than a few actually, reviews of Rise of Skywalker. Look, I'm not going to pretend like they're speaking of fact because I'm not knowledgeable on this, but it seems that some of these guys, in terms of what's happened, they feel like it crapped on a lot of previous things. Even I remember when that trailer came out, and the Star Troopers were like flying on jetpacks or whatever, and they were like they fly, and I saw these people making these jokes and like, talking about continuity and what's already canon. It's like how they should have known that they were able to do that, and I love that when I see that because it means that you're paying attention, right? And even the guys that are more normies, they seem to be demanding of more excellence, even though if they're not diehard. I don't seem to see that replicated with Marvel and DC, where maybe, again, it's just a lens that I'm seeing it in or through. But when I see it, I feel like people they can do something like Captain Marvel, which created so many continuity errors that we're not going to go all the way through, and how that movie was just shoehorned into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the talking heads, even the critics were like, well, it's okay, right? You know, it's fine. No, not even criticizing it for that. They're more so on the defense. This is why I said that this is the most Captain Marvel, as an example, is the most, as far as what I've seen, the most defended movie that I've ever seen. When you can have an entire, talking about Rotten Tomatoes, an entire website changed for the sake of protecting that there's something going on, right? But when I see some of the guys that, for example, reviewed Rise of Skywalker, even guys that had previously reviewed like Captain Marvel, they had their criticism of it. And a lot of it stemmed from the canon and the continuity. And I think at this point in time, Star Wars just demands, the fans seemingly demand more excellence, which is interesting. Yes, Star Wars has their comic books and stuff as well. Again, you can get some of these Marvel lines. However, it just seems, as far as how I view it, that they seem to demand a lot more excellence. They seem to demand a lot more excellence from, again, the normies and the diehards demand a lot more excellence, demanding that the directors care, demanding that the screenwriters care, and they are a little bit more passionate about continuity and canon, right? Or related issues. Whereas to some guys on the other side, on the Marvel side, same guys often, where it's like you give them a bunch of flashing screens, flashing, lights on the screen and action, and then they're like, whatever, right? They'll judge it if it's good or bad, even though it's part of an extended universe. I'm starting to see these guys cross over into the actual, physical comic books, where it's like, oh, we don't care, right? And I'm not saying that there's not individuals within Star Wars that protect it that don't care about that sort of stuff. There are, I understand that. But I'm just saying, as far as the way that I view it, on average, it seems that the Star Wars fanatics, care a lot more about that as opposed to guys that are fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And such. And DC can be part of this. You can include them in part of this as well, though DC's just not protected. Now, I think you'd have to go more so to the comic books to talk about that. But DC's not as protected as Marvel from the cinematic side, where, and this is why I've always said that you got to take people's criticism of DC with a grain of salt, because they'll shred whatever DC's doing and then just gobble up whatever Marvel's doing, which tells you that they have this sort of bias. However, definitely when it comes to the comic books, it's a similar thing where I think you get diehards that demand excellence from the comic book side, but you also get guys that are green lighting whatever they do. DC does. No matter how many canon and continuity issues that they create, it's just they just want to be a part of something and they'll just eat it up. But I feel like Star Wars, and that's what I can appreciate from the Star Wars fanatics. So big shout out to you guys. I know a lot of my fan base are our Star Wars guys, and fortunately I don't have a lot to offer in that aspect. People are always, hey, how you feel about this movie? How do you feel about that? The only thing I've done is play Jedi Fallen Order. That's it. I don't know a whole lot about Star Wars. I've seen a movie or two, but I don't know just a lot about it. And I'm pretty open about my ignorance on that. And that's why I don't speak strongly about the source material of the Star Wars. But talking to guys, my fellow content creators and such, and even it's with gaming, right? Even in gaming, with some of my bros and their Star Wars guys, they just hearing them conversate, or having conversate is not a word. Hearing their conversations and hearing them converse about Star Wars is just different. It's almost like they have the passion that I have passion with in regards to Marvel, and maybe that's what this is. Maybe that's what we're seeing, is that we're seeing people that are just maybe the Star Wars fanatics are just more passionate about their fandoms. And it's not just because of when it was created, because it was part of their childhood or anything like that. No, these are grown adults. And I think that these guys, and they have every right to demand that the directors, the screenwriters, presidents, what have you, pay attention, to the content that they're putting out when they have the brand. When they have the brand, and we're supposed to consider this, part of this extended universe, we expect them to pay attention, not to treat it like a cash grab, not to treat it like, this is just your platform to do whatever it is that you want, certainly from a social, political aspect. It seems that they demand excellence a lot more. Some will just, don't get me wrong, they have their shield media as well. And I don't discount that. Again, some of my fellow content creators are constantly calling those out, but I just feel like, as far as my observation, and I would love you guys' comments and converse among yourselves, as far as if you are a fan of comic books and Star Wars, do you feel that there's a difference from the cultural side, a difference in terms of how people criticize them from the canon and continuity related issues? As in, like, something happens in a new movie, or even a new comic book, and they're like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. What are you doing? And I feel like they are quicker to call that stuff out. And maybe it's because, again, speaking from the outside looking in, this is just a theory. I don't know anything about these movies. Maybe it's because they laid a couple of duds in a row, because I know the last movie had a lot of backlash as well. And maybe that's these guys, even the Shield media critics, some of them have just been like, oh, we can't defend it anymore. But I don't know, just from my lens and how I view it. And I'm a guy that likes to pay attention to that sort of stuff. I'm all about culture. I talk about this from politics, from the political element as well, and how I try to relate to people from a cultural standpoint. So it's things that I always appreciate. Even if I'm not a part of it, I appreciate people's content in that regards, which is why I'll sit in on people's streams knowing good and well I have no idea what's going on with Star Wars, what's going on. Does this make sense? To me, absolutely not. I have it in the background playing, because I like to see people getting passionate about things that they personally care about. And again, Star Wars has a lot of crossover when it comes to Marvel and mainstream comics, because a lot of those guys are fans. A lot of guys that are fans of one are fans of the others. But I'd like to know what you guys' thoughts are. I just feel like, and I appreciate you guys. If you feel I'm right about it, and hopefully you do, and that's something that you notice, I think that's a very good thing, that you guys are holding their feet to the fire, and it's not even an unrealistic expectation. You guys expect the people that inherit this brand to care. That's all. You expect them to care, and their art should show they care at minimum. At minimum, even if the movie isn't the greatest, even if it doesn't pass or surpass previous generations of Star Wars movies or whatever movie, you expect the people that are now part of it to at least give a crap enough to care, to pay attention, to be fans of the work that they're creating. And that's been a lot of my gripes with the Marvel stuff, is that you get people that are part of these projects that have zero connection to the source material. Zero. And they admit it. I talked about the Black Widow screenwriter and how she was like, oh, I never even cared about she said she never cared about superhero movies until she got on Marvel. So it's like, again, and then she's going on in this interview about how she wants to work with people and advocate these sort of social justice elements. And that's crazy to me, that they're basically admitting, hey, we know that this is a recognizable brand, so why don't we hijack it to then put forth our personal social preference or agenda in the movie? So we basically use it as a platform, even though this isn't something that we personally created and, quite frankly, don't even care about. That's how they operate. And you get people that admitting. And I think that the only way to combat that is for the fans to demand excellence. For the fans, when they don't just because it has a brand, and that's what happens with the comic book stuff that really irritates the living crap out of me, is that they'll have a live action depiction of a character that's so far off the source material, right? So far off the source material. And then I'm demanding excellence, and the first thing that they say is a different universe. Like that's always the excuse. You different universe, fictional characters, a different universe. And I don't hear that with Star Wars, right? I don't hear that. I do not hear that with Star Wars, folks. But on this side, it's different universe. Oh, who cares? You grew up on it's not made for you. Like, bro, why even use the branding? Why even use the character if you're not gonna, at the very minimum, pay attention, respect the source material? Not saying it got to be exactly verbatim like it, though. Again, most normies wouldn't care because they would have never read the source material anyway, so it'd be new to them. But at the least, you should be able to respect them. You should be able to respect the source material. It's no shortage of comic book guys, so you should be able to have a team full of people that care about this stuff, that actually invested in it, not just trying to get it or be part of it as a cash grab. That's just my view, and I wanted to let you guys in on that. So if you could, let me know what you guys see. And if maybe you think I'm off base, and again, I maybe again, it's just my lens. This is one of the things that I see, and I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that everything that I say in regards to this particular subject matter is fact, because I do recognize that because I'm not actually part of the Star Wars culture, there's a bias there, and maybe that's what I see, the bias. Maybe it's just as bad. Maybe it's worse. But I'd like to see your thoughts on it, or hear your thoughts on it, or see it more so in the comments. And let me know, do you think that, on average, if we compare, let's say, because they're both with Disney, Marvel and DC, do you think that Disney fans, or not Disney fans, excuse me, not Marvel and DC. What the hell am I talking about? Star Wars or Marvel? Get a grip, Eric. Star Wars or Marvel? Do you think that the Star Wars fans demand more excellence from the content that's being put out that's Star Wars related in comparison to people that claim to be fans of Marvel comics?